In 1922, Lord Carnarvon opened King Tut's tomb and died months later. Coincidence? Probably. But that didn't stop people from believing in the curse for the next century. I'm about to show you 10 ancient curses so stupid, so historically backwards, and so genuinely believed that you'll question how we made it out of the Bronze Age. By the end, you'll realize that humanity's greatest curse isn't magical. It's our own stupidity. Let's count down the 10 dumbest ancient curses people still take seriously. October 6, 1945. A Greek tavern owner brings his pet goat to a Cubs game. The goat smells bad, shocking, I know, and they kick him out. He declares the Cubs will never win a World Series again, and for 71 years, they didn't. Now, this curse requires us to believe that A. Greek tavern owners have magical powers, B. God cares about baseball, and C. A smelly farm animal can override decades of athletic training. The Cubs finally won in 2016, breaking the curse. Or, and hear me out, they just built a better team. But no, it was definitely the goat ghost finally forgiving them. Here's the thing, curses that can be broken by playing baseball better aren't curses. They're just losing streaks with PR problems. If curses worked this way, I'd curse my gym to make me fit without working out. Spoiler, it doesn't work. Speaking of sports curses that are just bad management, the Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees in 1920 and didn't win a World Series for 86 years. Clearly, this was supernatural punishment and not just the consequences of terrible decision-making. The curse was broken in 2004 when they finally won. What changed? Did they sacrifice a Yankee, perform an exorcism? Nope, they hired better players and a good manager. Revolutionary strategy. You know what's actually cursed? Thinking that selling your best player might have negative consequences for your team. That's not mysticism, that's economics. The real curse was ownership being cheap. But sure, blame the ghost of Babe Ruth instead of the guy who traded him for cash to fund a Broadway play. Yes, really, that's what the owner did with the money. In 1840, Tecumseh's brother allegedly cursed every US president elected in a year, ending in 0 to die in office. And weirdly, it worked. Sort of. If you squint and ignore facts. Lincoln, 1860, Garfield, 1880, McKinley, 1900, Harding, 1920, FDR, 1940, and Kennedy, 1960 all died in office. Spooky. Except Lincoln and Kennedy were assassinated. That's not magic, that's disgruntled guys with guns. FDR was elected 4 times, smoked like a chimney, and was literally already dying. The curse is doing a lot less work than bad security and pre-existing conditions. Reagan, 1980, broke it by not dying. He got shot and survived, which means either the curse got lazy or, wild theory, there was never a curse. Just confirmation bias with a 160-year sample size. That's not mysticism. It's cherry-picking data until it looks meaningful. If this curse were real, Tecumseh's brother should have been way more specific. You'll die in office unless you have good health care isn't exactly Voldemort-level commitment to evil. 3 down, 7 to go, and these get way dumber. Stick around because number 4 involves Superman, number 2 killed actual people, and number 1 is still ruining lives today. Quick question for the comments, what's the dumbest curse you've personally witnessed? That weird family thing your aunt won't shut up about? Let me know below. Everyone who plays Superman dies tragically. Except, they don't? Let's examine the evidence. George Reeves, 1950s TV Superman, died by gunshot. Ruled suicide, though conspiracy theories persist. Tragic? Yes. Curse? Or depression and Hollywood's dark side? Christopher Reeve became paralyzed in a horse riding accident. Absolutely tragic. But he played Superman for 4 movies over 7 years, then had a freak accident 9 years later. If the curse is that delayed, it's less ancient evil and more random probability with a long fuse. And here's the thing, dozens of actors have played Superman. Brandon Routh? Fine. Henry Cavill? Still alive and ridiculously jacked. Tom Welling did 10 seasons of Smallville, and his biggest curse is people asking if he's tired of being asked about Smallville. This curse only works if you ignore everyone it didn't affect and focus on tragedy porn. That's not supernatural, it's confirmation bias wearing a cape. The real curse is Hollywood's treatment of actors in general, Superman costume optional. In theater, you never say Macbeth inside a theater. You call it the Scottish play. Why? Because Shakespeare allegedly used real witchcraft spells in the play, and now it's cursed. Accidents happen during productions, props fail, actors get injured, stages collapse. Or revolutionary thought, live theater is dangerous. You're waving swords in the dark, climbing rickety sets, and performing the same show 200 times. Accidents happen. It's not the ghost of Shakespeare punishing you, it's physics and repetition. The curse has been around since 1606. You know how many productions of Macbeth have happened since then? Thousands. You know how many of those had 0 incidents? Most of them, but we only remember the disasters because confirmation bias is the real curse here. Also, if Shakespeare had access to real witchcraft, why did he waste it on a play about Scottish succession? He could have cursed his critics, made himself immortal, or at minimum fixed his hairline. Instead, he allegedly cursed actors for performing his work, which makes him money. That's the worst business model ever. Please perform my play, but also you might die. No wonder Globe Theatre had staffing issues, the granddaddy of curse narratives. When Howard Carter opened King Tut's tomb in 1922, Lord Carnarvon, his financial backer, died 5 months later from an infected mosquito bite. The media went insane. Ancient Egyptian curse strikes. Except Howard Carter, the guy who actually opened the tomb and disturbed the mummy, lived another 17 years and died of lymphoma at 64. If the curse missed the main guy, it's not a curse. It's just bad aim. That's like a heat-seeking missile locking onto the intern instead of the pilot. Of the 58 people present at the tomb opening, only 8 died within a decade. The rest lived normal lifespans. But curse fails to kill 50 people doesn't sell newspapers. The entire curse narrative was invented by Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, the Sherlock Holmes guy who believed in fairies and seances. Not exactly your go-to source for rational analysis. The actual curse inscription everyone quotes doesn't exist on Tut's tomb. It's from a different tomb, mistranslated, and says something closer to respect the dead than you'll die horribly. But facts don't matter when you've got a narrative to sell. The real curse is media literacy, or lack thereof. We're halfway through, and I can feel your faith in humanity declining. Before we continue, drop in the comments. Have you ever legitimately believed in a curse? No judgment, we've all been there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you're basically cursed to miss future videos that mock human stupidity. Just saying. The Hope Diamond, a massive 45-carat blue diamond, is allegedly cursed. Everyone who owns it suffers tragedy, bankruptcy, suicide, murder, revolution. Spooky. Except when you actually check the records, most owners lived fine lives, and the curse was literally invented by a jeweler trying to sell newspapers to drive up the diamond's value. It worked. The most famous victim was Marie Antoinette, who wore it and then got guillotined during the French Revolution. But here's the thing, she got guillotined because France was starving and she was royalty, not because of a shiny rock. The diamond didn't cause the revolution, systemic inequality did. The gem was just there. If we're blaming jewelry for the French Revolution, we've fundamentally misunderstood economics and also history. The Hope Diamond is now in the Smithsonian. The US government has owned it since 1958. If it's cursed, the curse is really taking its time. Unless you count government dysfunction, in which case, yeah, maybe it is cursed. The real curse is how easily people will believe something is magical if it's expensive. If I told you a $50 cubic zirconia was cursed, you'd laugh. But a multi-million-dollar diamond? Suddenly, it's plausible. The curse isn't supernatural. It's wealth worship with extra steps. James Dean died in 1955 driving his Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. After his death, the car became cursed. Mechanics who worked on the wreckage were injured. Parts were sold to other racers who then crashed. The garage housing it burned down. A truck carrying it crashed. Finally, the car disappeared in transit and was never seen again, because even the curse couldn't keep track of it. Here's the thing, it was a mangled car from a fatal accident, sold for parts to race car drivers, people who crash professionally. Shocking that they had accidents. This is like selling shark teeth to swimmers and being surprised when someone gets bitten. Correlation isn't causation, it's just poor customer targeting. Also, let's be real, the car was called Little Bastard. That's not a curse, that's nominative determinism. You name your death machine Little Bastard and surprise Pikachu face when bad things happen? The curse was branding. The real tragedy isn't supernatural. It's that James Dean was 24, driving too fast, and died instantly. That's not a curse. It's physics and tragedy. But we can't accept that meaningless accidents happen, so we invent magical explanations. The curse isn't in the car. It's in our need for narrative where there's only chaos. In June 1941, Soviet archaeologists opened the tomb of Timur, a 14th century conqueror who killed millions. Local elders warned them, "Open this tomb and unleash war worse than Timur himself." The scientists, being scientists, laughed and opened it anyway. 3 days later, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, began. Coincidence? Probably, but it gets weirder. In 1942, Stalin ordered Timur's remains reburied with full Islamic honors. Shortly after, the Soviets won the Battle of Stalingrad, turning the tide of the war. Now, this requires believing that A. Timur's ghost controls geopolitics, B. Hitler was waiting for a tomb opening to invade, and C. Respectful reburial influences military strategy. Or, and I'm just spitballing here, World War II was already happening, and people found patterns in random events because humans are pattern-seeking machines who hate admitting the universe is chaos. The curse worked because of confirmation bias and wartime hysteria. If they'd opened the tomb in peacetime, nothing would have happened, and we'd never have heard this story. The real curse is how desperate we are to find meaning in coincidence. Though I'll admit, if there's one guy whose ghost I'd worry about, it's the warlord who literally built pyramids of human skulls. He wasn't subtle in life. Why start in death? One curse left, and it's still destroying lives today. Before I reveal number 1, tell me, would you open a cursed tomb? Would you risk it for science? Drop your answer below, and if you think you know what number 1 is, comment your guess. Let's see who's been paying attention. In the 1980s, British tabloids reported that houses containing prints of the Crying Boy painting kept burning down, but the painting always survived unscathed. People went insane. Mass burnings of the prints. Families terrified. Insurance claims mentioning the painting. Here's what actually happened. The painting was cheap, mass-produced, and sold to thousands of working-class homes in the UK. Some of those homes caught fire because, and this is shocking, house fires happen. The painting survived because it was printed on flame-retardant material, standard for 1950s prints, and framed behind glass. It didn't survive by magic, it survived by manufacturing standards. But tabloids needed a story, so they invented a curse. And because the print was in so many homes, confirmation bias did the rest. "I had a fire and owned the painting" became "the painting caused my fire." Never mind the faulty wiring, the chip pan fires, or the fact that the UK had terrible fire safety standards in the 80s. The curse ruined lives. People threw away sentimental items. Families blamed their tragedy on a $5 print instead of actual fire safety issues. Insurance fraud claims skyrocketed. The real curse wasn't supernatural, it was media hysteria creating panic where there should have been fire prevention education. And here's the kicker, you can still buy these prints today. They're on eBay for like $20. If you want to test the curse yourself, you can. Spoiler alert, your house won't burn down, but you will own a creepy painting of a sad kid, which is its own kind of curse. This is number 1 because it's still believed, it's easily debunked, and it shows how dangerous confirmation bias becomes when mixed with media manipulation and genuine tragedy. The Crying Boy isn't cursed, but our critical thinking skills definitely are. So we've covered 10 curses. Some are harmless fun, sports teams, theater superstitions. Others are genuinely harmful, panic over paintings causing people to ignore real fire safety, or tomb curses spreading during wartime. But here's what all these curses have in common. They're not real. And I don't mean that in a smug, I'm so rational way. I mean that the belief in curses causes real harm because it stops people from addressing actual problems. The Cubs didn't need to break a curse, they needed better management. The Red Sox didn't need Ghost Babe Ruth's forgiveness, they needed to stop being cheap. King Tut's tomb didn't kill people, mosquito-borne illness and old age did. The Hope Diamond didn't cause the French Revolution, feudalism and inequality did. James Dean's car wasn't evil, speed and physics killed him. The Crying Boy painting didn't burn houses, faulty wiring and chip pans did. The real curse is our desperate need to find patterns in randomness. We can't accept that bad things happen for no reason, so we invent magical explanations. It's comforting to think there's a force we can appease or a ritual we can perform. It's terrifying to accept that chaos is random and the universe doesn't care. But here's the thing, believing in curses makes us less safe, not more. If you think your house burned down because of a painting, you won't fix your wiring. If you think your team is cursed, you won't demand better coaching. If you think a tomb unleashed World War II, you won't study how fascism actually rises. Curses let us avoid responsibility. They're narrative shortcuts that feel meaningful but explain nothing. And in 2025, with all of human knowledge in our pockets, we're still doing this. Still blaming bad luck on ancient magic instead of probability, still seeing patterns that aren't there, still cursing ourselves with superstition. So here's my challenge. Next time something bad happens, your team loses, you have bad luck, things keep breaking, ask yourself, is this a curse or is this just stuff? Because 99.99% of the time, it's just stuff. Random, meaningless, uncoordinated stuff. And if you can accept that, you're free. Free from fear of paintings, tombs, diamonds, and goats. Free to actually fix problems instead of performing rituals. Free from the greatest curse of all, our own gullibility. The ancient world was full of real horrors. Disease, war, famine, violence. They didn't need magical curses to explain suffering. They had plenty of actual suffering. We invented curses later when we'd solved enough problems that we needed new things to fear. So yeah, curses aren't real, but our willingness to believe in them, that might be the closest thing to an actual curse humanity has. So there you have it, 10 ancient curses that are actually just coincidence, bad luck, and confirmation bias in a spooky trench coat. Now it's your turn. Drop in the comments. What's the dumbest curse or superstition you've encountered? Does your family have a curse story that's just bad genetics or terrible decision-making? Have you ever genuinely believed in a curse, and what changed your mind? And if you made it all the way to the end, first off, you're not cursed with a short attention span, so congrats. Second, hit that subscribe button. I promise the algorithm won't curse you if you don't, but it might if you do. Wait, no, that's not how that works. Thanks for watching. Stay skeptical. Question narratives. Don't burn your paintings. And remember, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And maybe goats at sporting events. See you in the next one. Unless you're cursed. Just kidding. Curses aren't real. Probably.